Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Lunch and Learn sessions. So my name is Dana, and today we are on our third session of the Azure Security Series to talk about Azure Security in Infrastructure as a Service. Again, we have Wim today with us. Thank you so much again, Wim.
Thank you.
Now hand it over to you.
Thanks. So okay, here we go. So hello everyone, and welcome to the third session in the Cloud Lunch and Learn Azure Security Series. Today's session is titled, like Dana already mentioned, Secure Azure IaaS Workloads in a Nutshell. So it's a big topic to cover. So I took all the interesting stuff and put it in a session around 45-50 minutes. So next Friday, the 25th, is the latest session in this series, where I will tell you all about how you can securely connect to your Azure resources. But let us first focus on today. Before I want to begin, I first want to thank Dana and Hugo and the other members of the Cloud and Lunch team for setting up this concept and for inviting me to deliver these talks around securing your Azure environment. Let me also share a little bit about myself. My name is Wim. I live in Belgium, where I work as a cloud architect. Next to that, I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, so I also deliver all kinds of Azure trainings. Community-wise, I'm a founding board member of a Belgium user group called MC2MC. I also have my own blog, https://wimmatthijssen.com, where I blog a lot about my daily experiences with Azure and all related Microsoft hybrid cloud services. Since July of this year, I'm also awarded as a Microsoft Azure MVP, what a great honor was and still is. And like most IT professionals these days, I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you ever want to reach out or just want to say hi or ask a question about this session, you can always contact me through my Twitter handle @2matthijssen or through LinkedIn. That's wrong. It's over here. So on the agenda today, first, a short introduction why you need to protect your IaaS workloads. Then I will take a look at Azure platform patching. After that, I will tell you all about how you can back up your different IaaS workloads. And then I will look into some Azure services like Azure Advisor and Azure Security Center. And I will close off with looking into Azure Update Management and Azure Disk Encryption. So the first question you could ask yourself is why that you as an Azure admin need to protect and secure Azure IaaS workloads? Well, like probably most of you know, there are different cloud service models. On the left side, you have the traditional data center where you're responsible for everything from networking to deploying physical server or virtual machine and troubleshooting every application running on those. Then you also have the platform as a service, the PaaS model, where you're only responsible for your application and the data. Examples of those are Azure SQL databases or Azure Web Apps. Another model is a software as a service, SaaS, where the complete application is managed by a vendor, like, for example, Microsoft. Examples here are Office 365 or Salesforce. But the focus of today's session is infrastructure as a service, the IaaS model, where Microsoft is responsible for managing everything until the VM. Microsoft takes care of all the hardware, cabling, and so on. And you're responsible as a customer starts from the VM itself. You need to take care of the OS patching, the applications running on the VM, but you're also responsible, for example, for the VM backups and to foresee high availability for these VMs if that's a requirement for your business. Like you could see at the previous slide, as an Azure Administrator and Azure Admin, you're responsible for all your Azure IaaS resources and also for all your other Azure resources in some form. You're not only responsible for building, managing, automating, and optimizing these resources, but also for protecting and securing them. Just like you did before when you only worked on premises, because the cloud or your hybrid cloud doesn't run itself. Depending on which cloud service model you run your workloads, is it IaaS, PaaS, serverless, SaaS, there will always be a shared responsibility where Microsoft will manage everything till a certain point, but you as an Azure admin also have some responsibility depending on the cloud service model you're using. So that's for the intro. So let us first take a look at Azure platform patching. Microsoft periodically updates its host infrastructure to improve the reliability, performance, and security of the host infrastructure. The purpose of these updates ranges from patching software components in the hosting environments to upgrading networking components or decommissioning older hardware. Mostly those updates rarely affect the hosted IaaS VMs, but when an updates do have an effect, Microsoft chooses to the least impactful method for implementing those updates. If the update doesn't require a reboot of the host, mostly they're running everything on Hyper-V, the VM is paused while the host is updated, or the VM is live migrated to an already updated host, so they pick it up from one host, place it on another one, and you probably don't get a clue that the underlying host is updated. Microsoft, if the maintenance does require a reboot, you will be notified in advance of this planned maintenance. Microsoft then also provides a time window in which you can start the maintenance yourself, which is called the self-service phase. When you start this, the VM is redeployed to an already updated node. Most of the time, you have it's around 35 days to do this in your own maintenance window. So you can do it in your own time when you have your maintenance scheduled for the on-premise environments, for example. When this self-service phase ends, then the scheduled maintenance phase begins. And during this phase, you can still query for the maintenance phase, but you can't start the maintenance yourself anymore. So you need to wait until Microsoft does the maintenance for you. If you decide to wait until that scheduled maintenance phase, there are a few availability options you can choose between to maintain the highest availability for IaaS VMs. For any single VM instance you deploy with standard AGD managed disks, there is a guarantee that you will have a virtual machine connectivity of at least 95%. Just keep in mind that this is a financial backed SLA, and it does not foresee any form of high availability. So your VM can always go down. There is no other VM that takes over your application or workload. To foresee real high availability when deploying your VMs, you can create those VMs within an availability set to provide a high availability of at least 99.95%. You can also choose to deploy them in an availability zone. And availability zones are unique locations within an Azure region. Each zone is made up of one or more data centers equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking. And to ensure resiliency, there is a minimum of 3 separated zones in all enabled regions to foresee an SLA of at least 99.99%. And for disaster recovery purposes, you can also work with region pairs. So when one region is down, all VMs and all your other Azure resources are failed over from one region to the other one. So it can sustain a complete data center and region failure, for example. So I think it's also good to know the different SLA'S for Azure resources and services, because those SLA'S define Microsoft's commitment to an Azure service or product. Individual SLA'S are available for each Azure product and service, and SLA'S together with availability is described in terms of nines. For example, 4 nines mean 99.99% uptime, which you can translate into 1 minute or less of potential downtime per week. Keep in mind that your applications or workloads mostly depend on multiple services. For instance, virtual machines, but those virtual machines also work with storage or they work with networking. And all those services may have different SLAs. These combined SLAs form a composite. And to determine your composite SLA, you can multiply the SLAs for all the services you're using and divide that number by 100 for calculating the composite SLA percentage. Sometimes it's needed if you have a special company that needs to follow specific regulations. You need to calculate that one to succeed to those. So like already seen on some of the previous slides, you can foresee high availability for your Windows and Linux VMs by use of an availability set. You can see an availability set as a logical grouping for isolating your VM resources from each other when they are deployed. This ensures that that during planned and even unplanned maintenance, at least one virtual machine is available. In the back, these VMs will be spread across different fault and update domains. A fault domain is essentially a rack of servers, and you can see an update domain as hosts that are updated together. So Azure makes sure that the VMs you place within an availability set run across multiple physical servers and network switches, all in their own computer racks with their own storage and own power units. If a hardware or software failure happens, only a subset of your VMs will be impacted and your overall solution stays operational. So you can see availability sets as essential for building reliable cloud solutions on the IaaS platform. This is an example of such an end-to-end high available solution where we have at the left side 2 front-end web servers, the web tier, and at the right side we have 2 back-end SQL VMs in a SQL always-on setup in the data tier, and each are defined in its own availability set. In the web tier, we have multiple web roles in an IaaS application, which is load balanced with an external load balancer or application gateway, for example, to the internet. And at the other side, it's connected with an internal load balancer to the backend to be able to connect to the databases running on the SQL always on. In this way, you can foresee redundancy at every level for any business critical workload you're running. Some things you should keep in mind when using availability sets. Like I already said, to foresee high availability, you should at least place your production workloads in a separated availability set. You could have an availability set for your domain controllers if you're still running those in IaaS, for your web servers, SQL always on, and every other workload you can think of. You need to combine those with a load balancer. Is it internal or external? It could also be an application gateway. Also, never place a single VM in an availability set because then your SLA will change from 99.95% to 0. And best is to use the schedule maintenance window when planned maintenance is ahead. So if there's planned maintenance and your VMs are running inside an availability set, you can just let it go because your workload always will be up and running. And for complete redundancy until the storage level, you should always use managed disks for the VMs you place in an availability set. So keep those tips in mind when you start deploying availability sets. So next to the planned maintenance, the Azure infrastructure can also suffer from unplanned maintenance. The same unplanned events can occur just like, you can have them on premises. A specific server can crash or power can be dropped, or you can have a network failure, or even a complete server rack can fail or go down. All those events also can happen in an Azure data center. And depending on the issue, the Azure platform itself will try to migrate your VM to an healthy host, but even then your VM can reboot or can be completely unavailable after the failure. And to inform you from such service issues, you can use the free Azure Service Health service. So imagine yourself coming in the office one morning and everyone is in panic because a subset of your Azure VMs is unavailable. Your first thought probably is, did someone did something wrong, or is it an issue in the Azure backbone? I have no clue. Luckily, if you use Azure Service Health, this service will notify you of issues in the Azure backbone that impact your running Azure resources. It will tell you what the impact is and informs you on how Microsoft is resolving the issue. And then Microsoft will also notify you when the issue is resolved through Azure Service Health. You have 4 different types of events where Azure Service Health can inform you about. The first one is service issues. This one informs you about outages and issues that could cause problems for the specific resources that you have running within your Azure subscriptions. Next to that, you can also get visibility when planned maintenance is on hand for your Azure VMs. And with the last two service health events, it will give you health and security advisories. And here you can get informed about Azure's feature or services you're using that are being phased out or replaced. Or you can, for example, be informed if you exceed a specific users quota. So, time for the first demo. Let me go to the Azure portal. So here's my Azure portal. The first thing I want to show you is availability sets. So you can go to the global search bar, just type in AV of availability sets, click on those. You can see I have one availability set already running in my environment. If I click on that one, you can clearly see which VMs are running are using this availability set. You can see they're in different fault domains and different update domains. So if this VM, a location where this VM is running will fail, yeah, probably everything will keep running because this one is completely running a complete other update domain and a complete other fault domain. You can also change the fault domains, and you can also change the update domains, and you can also add extra VMs to this availability set. The next thing I want to show is Azure Service Health. You can go for it from the sidebar, or you can type it in from over here. The nice thing is also if you do it from over here, if you go it from the global search, you get all the links to the Azure documentation. So if you click on a link, you will redirect it to another page, and you can read all about what Azure Service Health is, or you can read the other documents. Let me open it from the sidebar now. So we can see we have the service issues. For the moment, there are no issues on hand, luckily. Otherwise, I couldn't demo anything probably. You can click on the planned maintenance. You can see I have no planned maintenance ahead for any of my running VMs. So that's also good. You can click on the health advisories. Also, everything is running like it should. There are also no security advisories. The nice thing about Service Health is you can also go back 90 days in history. So you can look at the health history. If you can see last week, nothing happened. But if we go back for 3 months, you can see a lot of things happened. So the nice thing is for every issue, Microsoft will give you a broad explanation of what is happening, how is the issue updated, how are they fixing it. You can even download it in the PDF, or you can even track it on your mobile with the QR code, or download the link and place it in your ITS management system, for example. You can also look at resource health. For example, you think there's something wrong with your virtual machines. The nice thing is instead of going to each virtual machine separated, you can go in your environment, select your correct subscription, and type in virtual machines, for example. Let me look for virtual. I can't type it in. So for example, virtual machines, it's loading my resources. Here you can see everything is running except with this one. And over here, you can directly see what's wrong with it. The virtual machine is stopped and deallocated by a specific user. So you can read it, what's happening with, why it's not running. It's all from one single pane of glass. So it's an easy way to do it. You also can configure an health alert, so you get notified through email, and then you're not always need to go into the Azure portal to look at the issues. So that's the first demo. Let me go back to my slides. Okay, here we go. So the next topic I want to talk about is Azure Backup for IaaS workloads, which is also an important task every Azure admin must foresee to keep companies business critical and all other Azure IaaS workloads better protected. There are different scenarios where you could use Azure IaaS VM backup. First of all, in case of data loss or corruption, where you can use Azure Backup to do an instant file restore. The second one is accidental deletion of an Azure VM. Hopefully that doesn't happen a lot with your production VMs, but it could happen. And in that case, you could use Azure Backup to do a complete VM restore. And the third one, and also an interesting one, you probably sometimes need to do an update on a VM or update a specific software on a VM where you're not sure if everything is going to work like it should. Then you could restore that VM to a specific testing subnet, separate it from all other production subnets or VNets, install the software on and see if it works. If everything is okay, delete that restored VM and do the installation on your production VM. So you can use Azure Backup also as a kind of, how do you say it, a VM cloning mechanism for POC and testing purposes. So implementing IaaS VM backups is quite simple. You need to create a resource group, and after that, you need to create a recovery services vault in the region where you want to backup your VMs. Keep in mind that you can only backup VMs in the same region as where your recovery service vault is stored. You should also set a storage replication for your vault before you store any kind of backup data. And you can choose between LRS, GRS. You should do this directly because you can't change it anymore when any data is backupped to it. When you have set up your vault, you can then use a default policy or create your own backup policies. In these policies, you define how long a backup should be retained, and this in days, weeks, months, and even years. You also set a number of snapshots, which is by default 2. Also, don't forget to specify the resource group to store instant recovery points if you want to use your own naming convention. Otherwise, Microsoft is going to create one with the Microsoft's naming convention. And as a final step, you should enable the backup for all of VMs you want. But be aware that to be able to backup an IaaS VM, the VM snapshot extension for Windows VMs and the VM snapshot Linux extension for Linux VMs need to be installed, which isn't the case, for example, when you do a lift and shift, because then you first need to manually install it or through a script or through Azure Automation. To backup in IaaS Windows VM, the VM agent, like I already said, needs to be installed. And with your first backup, the backup extension will be installed. In case of Windows VM, this is the VM snapshot extension. Backup then coordinates with the volume shadow copy service, VSS, to take an application consistent snapshot of the VM. And by default, backup takes full VSS backups. If Azure Backup can't take an application consistent snapshot, it will take a file consistent snapshot. When your VM is using managed disk, then the snapshot is first saved on the same Azure storage as your managed disk in Azure infrastructure, which makes a restore a lot faster than while restoring from the vault. So keep in mind that whenever you need to restore a VM, for example, from the last 2 days, it's faster to do it from a snapshot than from the vault. Backing up Linux VMs is slightly different than backing up Windows VMs. The extension installed on the VM agent is the VM snapshot Linux extension. And by default, only file consistent backups are possible. If you want to foresee application consistent backups, for example, when you're running MySQL on a Linux VM, you should customize it by using pre and post scripts, which you can find in the shown GitHub repository. Change those scripts to fit your requirements, and also keep in mind that you, if you're still running ASM Linux, there's still people running ASM, that you cannot use Azure Backup to make a backup of those, because backing up Linux VMs is only supported for the ARM model, but probably that shouldn't be a problem for most of us. There are something I also want to mention. There are 3 types of snapshots. First of all, you have application consistent snapshot, where recovering a VM with that kind of snapshot, the VM boots up and there will be no data loss or corruption, because all data in memory and all transaction data is backed up. So the apps all start in a consistent state and you can start working without you needing to do any kind of other action. Then you also have a file system consistent backup, where recovering a VM from these states, there is also no data loss. But there is no guarantee that your application is able to start up. You should take a manual action to get your application or applications running again. And finally, you also have the crash consistent snapshot. This one takes a snapshot of all the files at exact the same time. This means that any files that rely on each other or at the same point in time and thus consistent. Most of the time, crash-consistent backups are fine for most non-database applications, but they really don't work for databases because they don't capture all the data in memory or any pending I/O operations, for example. And normally the VM should be able to start up, but there is no real guarantee. And when it starts, it will first of all, it will perform a disk check to fix any corruption errors. You have also some different restore options. You have the options to create a new VM. You can specify the name, resource group, and even the virtual network in a storage account. Another option is to restore a disk. With this option, you can restore a specific disk, which you can use to replace a current disk. Keep in mind that this option is only available for managed disk. Another thing you can do with restore disk is attach it, for example, to another VM. When you restore an OS disk, it also creates a JSON template, which also will allow you to rebuild a VM based on that specific disk. Finally, when you create an OS disk, completely messed up now. It can also recover files from an Azure virtual machine backup. This option is only available for ARM VMs. When you use it, Azure Backup creates an executable or script which you need to run on your local computer, which will mount a folio, and then you can access these files through Windows Explorer. You can copy these files to your local computer or copy it to any desired location. And these days, you can also restore any encrypted VMs you're using and do a cross-region restore. There are some things you should keep in mind when working with Azure Backup for Azure IaaS VMs. You can create up to 500 recovery service vaults per subscription. You can register around 1,000 VMs per vault. You can only change the storage options before you have any backup stored. Azure VMs itself have one scheduled backup per day, but you can make 4 on-demand backups per day. For backing up VMs with Azure Disk Encryption, just keep in mind that you need to provide permissions for Azure Backup to access the key vault. You should also don't put a resource lock on the by Azure Backup generated resource group or the resource group where your recovery services vault is stored. Otherwise, it could be that backups will fail. And you should use a network security group service tag for Azure Backup to whitelist all Azure IP addresses needed to be able to, for example, backup SQL in an Azure IaaS VM. So let me show a quick demo around Azure Backup. So I will open recovery services vault from the sidebar. You can see I already have 4. Let me, for example, take this one. If I want to see which items are protected by this recovery service vault, I can just click on backup items. You can see they're on-premise resources, but there's also Azure Backup Server or maps. You can use the Azure Backup page or whatever. You can see I already have 4 Azure virtual machines protected. You can click on those. You can see all my latest backups worked. This is a Linux VM. This is a Windows VM. You can see the Windows VM all as application consistent backups in Snapshot and Vault. If you go to the Linux VM, I didn't configure any pre and post scripts, so you can see there's only a file system consistent backup. If you want to restore a backup, just click on the specific VM, click on Restore VM, select the restore point, for example, this one. Okay. You get a few options. You can create a new VM based on that specific backup or replace an existing. Keep in mind, if you use replace existing, the original VM should be deallocated. Otherwise, the restore won't work. So you can just fill in everything, the name, the resource group, virtual network, and just click on restore, and it will start restoring. Let me close this one. If you want to add an extra backup, you can also do it from over here. Just click on Add, choose your workloads. They're all running in Azure. I want to backup in IaaS VM. Click on Backup, select your policy. I will leave it to the default policy and just click on Add. And then it will list all VMs that don't have a backup. You can select one, click on OK. So I need to refresh my browser. So probably I'm already logged on too long. So yeah, let me go back into that. Back into this. No, I was adding one. Just click on add, click on backup, click on add again. It's loading, click on this one, click on OK. And we'll close all my credits. Choose default policy, click on add. And just click on OK. And that's it. Then you just select enable backup and it will start creating the job to starting backup. So that's my Azure backup demo. Let me go back to the slides. The next topic I want to talk about is Azure Advisor and Azure Security Center. Another great free service you can use is Azure Advisor, which will give you personalized best practices to optimize and secure your Azure workloads, and this for all your Azure subscriptions. Those recommendations can be customized. Just a little bit too fast. I was saying those recommendations can be customized so that only recommendations are shown for the subscriptions and resource group that are most important to you. For example, you can choose to only show recommendations for your Azure production subscription, not for your dev subscriptions, for example, or just showing recommendations for some specific resource groups in your production subscription. You can also postpone recommendations for a specific time. And Azure Advisor is able to give you those recommendations by using telemetry data that it gathers from various Azure Monitor services. To catch Azure Advisor in one sentence, you could say Azure Advisor is your free personal in-house cloud consultant. Currently, there are 5 Azure Advisor dashboards that can help you. You have reliability, which will give you recommendations about fault tolerance and high availability. Then you have security, which is in the back integrated with Azure Security Center. Then you also have performance, operational excellence, that's the latest one added, and cost, which can help you to reduce your cloud spend. You also have Azure Security Center. You can see Azure Security Center as your main stop when you need the first broad overview of your Azure environment's security posture. It provides you with a centralized view of your Azure resources, like your IaaS VMs and their active security state. And if there is any potential to improve your overall security, Azure Security Center will give you recommendations that explain how a specific resource can be better protected. In this way, Security Center helps you not only to prevent, but also to detect and respond to all kinds of security threats for any of your Azure resources running in your environments. It's offered in 2 tiers. First of all, you have the free tier, which provides security recommendations to help you protect your Azure resources, and also Azure Secure Score is available. Next to the free tier, you also have the standard tier, which extends the capabilities of the free tier to workloads running in private and other public clouds. And it provides unified security management and threat protection across your hybrid cloud workloads. And you can, for example, also use just-in-time VM access. So to analyze how well your Azure environments are protected from various threats, you can use Secure Score from within Azure Security Center. Secure Score reviews your security recommendations and then prioritize them for you, so you know which recommendations to perform first. And your current Secure Score is based on the number of Security Center recommendations you've already completed. To decide which recommendations to resolve first, you should look at the severity of each one and its potential impact on your Secure Score. Just like Azure Advisor, you could kind of see Secure Score as your in-house security analyst. So let me shortly demo this also. So if you want to go into Azure Advisor, you just can type in Azure Advisor. There it is, click on it. You can see the 5 boards, for example, the cost one. Let us click on that one. He's saying that I have a public IP address that's not associated to any resource. There's also a nice feature, it's a quick fix. If you click on it, and you click over here, it's directly pointing to that specific public IP address. You can click on it. And now, for example, I see it's really not associated to anything and I don't need it anymore. I can just delete it. And you can see the Azure Advisor will give you advice, and with the quick fixes, it will guide you how to implement it. Let me go back to Azure Advisor, for example. If you click on the security one in the back, it will go to Security Center. You can see, for example, also reliability. For the reliability, enable virtual machine protection to protect your application from regional outage. For example, if you don't want to see that anymore, you can postpone that one, or you can delete it forever. Active API gateways for redundancy are another example. So let us now show something about Azure Security Center. I will go from it to the sidebar. Just click on Security Center. It's connected for my 4 subscriptions. The thing I want to show you is a secure score. You can also click from over here, but click on the secure score. My secure score is at the moment 30% for that specific production subscription and 71 for my 2 dev ones. If you want to upgrade my secure score for my production environment, just click on it. And over here, you will see all the recommendations and which impact they will have. So, for example, if I apply system updates, also through quick fix, just like in Azure Advisor, I can uplift my secure score with 18% to 48%. You don't need to implement everything, but it's an easy way to see how you can better make your environment secure by an easy way, because it really guides you on how you can implement everything. So really take a look at it for your environments and try to solve the most important ones for you. Let me go back to the slide deck. So let us now look on how you foresee updates for IaaS workloads. So you can do this with Azure Update Management. Azure Update Management requires a few prerequisites that needs to be in place before you can use it. It requires linking a Log Analytics workspace to an Azure Automation account. Azure Log Analytics is a service that helps you collect and analyze data that's generated by resources in your cloud and even on-premise environments. It gives you real-time insights by using integrated search and custom dashboards to analyze billions of records across all your workloads. At the center of Log Analytics is the Log Analytics workspace, which is hosted in Azure. Log Analytics collects data in this workspace from all connected resources. Data sources and solutions each create then their different record types, each with its own set of properties. But you can still analyze sources and solutions together in queries in this workspace. So next to the Log Analytics workspace, Update Management also requires an Azure Automation account, and therefore you will use Azure Automation, which deliver a cloud-based automation and configuration service that supports consistent management across your Azure and also non-Azure environments. It comprises process automation, configuration management, and update management. With automation, you will get complete control during deployments and any management operation you want to perform. For example, you can use your Azure PowerShell script in there and run it through an Azure Automation account in a scheduled form, for example. To use any of these, you first need to create an automation account. Just keep in mind that an automation account can manage resources across all regions and subscriptions for a given tenant. So if you have more tenants, you need to create an Azure Automation account in each one of those. When you have your Log Analytics workplace in place and you also have your Azure Automation account in place, you can start using Update Management in Azure Automation to manage operating system updates, not only for your Windows VMs, but also for your Linux VMs. But even for servers running on-premise environments or in other cloud environments. It will allow you to quickly assess the status of available updates on all agent machines and manage the process of installing required updates also on those servers. You can enable update managed for VMs in different ways. You can do it directly from your Azure Automation account or manually, including for example, VMs that are registered via Azure Arc. And you can also do it directly from the virtual machine page and configure the updates from there. So these days, you also have Azure Automatic VM Guest Patching. It's quite new. With Azure Automatic VM Guest Patching enabled, the VM is assessed periodically to check for available operating system patches. Updates specified by Microsoft as critical and security are automatically downloaded, installed on the VM, and this during off-peak hours. The complete patch orchestration is managed and handled by Microsoft Azure itself, and patches are applied following availability first principle. It's currently in public preview, and it only supports Windows VMs for the moment. And all those VMs should have the VM agent installed. So for the last topic of the day, I want to talk about Azure Disk Encryption. You first drink a little bit. Sorry. To be able to encrypt your VM disk, first of all, you need an Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a tool for securely storing and accessing secrets in Azure. You can see a secret as anything that you want to tightly control access to, such as API keys, passwords, or certificates. The Key Vault itself is kind of a logical group designed to store those secrets. Just keep in mind that it's not really intended to store any user passwords. It's available in two tiers. You have the standard and the premium. The difference between the two is that the premium also supports hardware security models or ISM protected keys next to the software protected keys were only usable in the standard tier. When you have your Azure Key Vault, you can foresee disk encryption for your IaaS VMs and the data on them by using Azure Disk Encryption, which enables you to encrypt your Windows and Linux IaaS VM disks. To provide this volume encryption for the SNL data disk, disk encryptions uses the BitLocker feature for Windows and the DeEncrypt feature for Linux. In the back, it integrates with Azure Key Vault, and this to help you control and manage the disk encryption keys and the secrets. You can use it for standard VMs and VMs with Azure Premium Storage. And a recommendation from Azure Advisor or through Azure Security is most of the time is enable encryption at rest. So it's one of the recommendations you can implement to uplift your Azure Secure score. So that's it for today. So does anyone have any questions at the moment? Dana, are there any in the chat?
No, I haven't seen any questions yet. Does anyone have anything they want to ask them?
They can all ask me through through Twitter or through in the chat or through LinkedIn.
James has a question.
Okay.
And Jersey asked, this new patching, does it automatically reboot VMs?
It does, but it looks at your time zone. So if you're in a specific time zone, let us say in West Europe, it will see what in West Europe are the business hours, and it will do it in the hours that are not pinpoint as business hours. So it's going to look into your time zone and then figures out what are your business hours. And then probably, let us say it's from 8 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. in the afternoon, sorry. Then it will probably reboot your system at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. So that's not during the business hours. So, but it's still in preview. Microsoft will probably change a lot for this. So at the moment it works like this. And It also only works for the Windows VMs.
Perfect. And James has just asked, is there an out-of-box feature for update management that allows you to report on updates to be deployed prior to them being deployed?
Yeah, you can automate it with Azure Monitor and stuff like that, but there's not something you download as a simple solution and you plug it in. You need to set it all by yourself. There are some scripts available at the Quick Start Center that can help you, or ARM templates as a good base foundation. And yeah, there are also a lot of people writing blogs about it. So look at those and you probably get it working like you want to get it working.
Perfect. And we just have another question here. Do we pay for backup service and what is it based on?
You pay for it because it's stored in Azure Storage in the back. So the pricing, you can look it up if you open the Azure pricing calculator, because it depends in which region you're located also. It's not that expensive. It's just you pay for the storage. You pay for the storage, and that's almost it. So keep that in mind. That's the important one. But just click it open in the Azure pricing calculator. Just go to it through any web browser, and you can look it up from there. And we have a good estimate about what it's going to cost you at the end of the month.
Amazing, thanks. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so thank you again so much, Wim. That was a great session. And as always, I think we can all agree you always have the best slideshows. And thanks everyone for joining us this session. And so as always, we've been throwing links at you in the chat. And so just as a recap, if you haven't had the chance, please do register to get the resources for our Microsoft Learning materials. It's very important for us to get a number of who has joined, so Microsoft can see that this initiative is, like, we've been getting very good numbers for this series. You can find material shared by our speakers in our GitHub. You can catch up on previous sessions on our YouTube channel, and we will be posting this session, as always, in a few days. We have our upcoming sessions on Power Platform series, part 2 of how to do a contract management solution on Monday. And of course, we have our fourth and last session of the security series with Wim, Securely Connect to Your Azure Resources, next Friday at the same time. And if you could just provide us with some feedback by using a very short Microsoft Form survey. Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
The only thing to say is thank you for your attention. And if you still have any questions, just contact me through my Twitter handle. That's the easiest one, I think. So thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.